Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are watching the Zenith Glow Astrology YouTube channel. My name is Christina, and I am an astrologer. And I would like to welcome you to this special episode all about Mercury Retrograde. So, we are just now entering the pre-shadow period for Mercury retrograde, which is why I have decided to do this video. So while it is true that Mercury's actual station into retrograde still won't be happening for another 3 weeks or so, I figured it's a good opportunity for us to look ahead and start exploring this energy before we feel it most acutely so that we can prepare ourselves for what that experience will be like once it happens to the best of our abilities, right? We can't always be prepared for everything. Before I get into everything, I would like to request, please, will you like this video? Will you subscribe to my channel? Will you hit the notification bell if you haven't done so already? Doing so will notify you every time I post a new video. If you are interested in booking a reading with me, I will post a link in the description below. And as well, I want to say thank you so much to those who have made donations to me. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you and how much your support helps me do this work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you all. And if you are interested in making a donation, I will post a link where you can do that also in the description box. Okay, let's talk about Mercury retrograde. So, a few things that we need to remind ourselves of. Maybe you don't, but I'm going to remind you anyway, because even though I know this stuff like the back of my hand, I need to remind myself about it all the time, which is kind of the point of Mercury retrograde, right? Reminding. Mercury rules the mind. We need to remind ourselves. We need to slow down, hit the brakes, take a pause, look inward, reflect, and do all those beautiful retrograde activities that start with the prefix re. Remember, recognize, revisit, etc., etc., etc. You've heard me say this before. I've also written a series about retrogrades that explores this energy and the meaning of it and how we can use it. If you're interested in that, I will post links to those articles below. But yeah, let's just talk about the here and now, which is also part of that energy, right? Because we are almost always in this state of forward momentum. It's our natural inclination to think about the future and to want to push forward and go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. For most of us, Mercury retrograde, while it can pose challenges and while it is infamous for causing technological hiccups and delays and vehicle accidents and daily mishaps and miscommunications and all kinds of things, which are frustrating when they happen, it does this in order to get us to slow down and retrace our steps so that we can be more centered between the past and the future, which would be the present, right? The whole point of this is because if we don't take time to pause and reflect and integrate what we are learning and what we are planning, especially from that mental perspective, that cognitive perspective, we're not going to be able to take wisdom with us as we move forward. We're not going to be able to truly learn anything, or once again, to integrate what we have learned on an experiential level. We're just always going to be flitting from one thing to another without actually harnessing any of the true potential in what we experience or what we learn. And then we're not going to be able to take those things and share them with other people on a level that has meaning, on a level that can reach people where they are at, right? Because we each hold our own unique perspective and we each need to receive information in a way that resonates with ourselves, with our own inner alignment. So all of these things get wrapped into these Mercury retrogrades. So yeah, it's frustrating, when you spill coffee on your keyboard or when you get a flat tire on the way to work or when your plane is delayed or whatever. But again, just remember that when these things happen, they are actually gentle reminders, or maybe not so gentle reminders from the universe, that you need to change your pace, that you need to stop and pause and consider being in the present moment, reflecting on what you were doing, rather than just trying to move at your normal high speed, forward momentum kind of pace. Okay. So I'm getting real into it here, but let's talk about when we're going to have this Mercury retrograde and what signs it's going to be retrograding through. So it will become, Mercury will station retrograde. It will station retrograde on November 9th, and it will start its retrograde at 6 degrees, 52 minutes of Sagittarius. It will then go retrograde until November 29th when it stations direct again. And it will do so at 20 degrees, 43 minutes of Scorpio. So this particular Mercury retrograde is actually bridging together the energies of Sagittarius and Scorpio. So we have a water sign and a fire sign. It did something similar earlier this year when it had its first retrograde back in March. So if you recall, this was a very intense time because it was right before we had the springtime eclipses. And at the same time, we had just come out of a Mars retrograde and Venus had just gone retrograde. So all the personal planets had this retrograde energy present, and Mercury and Venus were literally retrograde simultaneously. And I believe that they had their solar conjunctions around the same time as well. We'll talk about solar conjunctions in a minute. But during that time, Mercury was retrograde in the sign of Aries, and then it backtracked into the sign of Pisces. So again, we had this bridging together of water and fire elements. Now, it took its second retrograde. Mind you, Mercury typically goes retrograde 3 times a year. Every once in a while, we'll have 4 in one year if we catch it at the very tail end of December or the very beginning of January, whatever that month is that we start the year off with. Sorry, Capricorns. I don't know why that just went out of my head for a second. Maybe because I'm already feeling this energy, and that is a perfect example of how Mercury retrograde functions. You want to move forward, you want to be talking at your normal pace, and then you get tripped up on details like that. Like, what is the first month of our year named? So the second Mercury retrograde that we had this year was in the month of July, and it went from July to August, I believe, and it was only in the sign of Leo. So it did not bridge together any particular or any 2 different elements. So this is interesting, really interesting energy that we're coming into to conclude our year with. And it's also interesting because we see this bridging together with 2 of our main heavy hitter outer planets this year, Saturn and Neptune, which are still conjunct and are both retrograde and will be both of them in the sign of Pisces at the time of this Mercury retrograde. So we have water and fire. This is something I talked about in my very first podcast that I posted for the new year when I talked about coming into the energy of the wood snake and what we were going to experience in the year ahead. So this theme of water and fire, okay? So we can consider water to be this deep, emotional, psychic kind of energy, right? Very connected to our feelings, to our hearts, and also connected to the inner self, the inner being. Meanwhile, fire is a more masculine energy. It is active, it is quick, and it is expansive energy. It is creative energy. And both of them can be creative, actually. They're just creative in very different ways, but they both generate creativity from those 2 different modes. So let's talk about Scorpio and Sagittarius. If I were to give this Mercury retrograde its own theme, I would say that it holds the theme, the energy of you have to ground or root down, deep down, if you want to expand up higher, kind of like a tree. The deeper the roots go, the higher the branches can go. Or rather, like an oak tree, because they say that oak trees, however high and large their branches that you can visibly see extend outward, their roots are actually equal size below the surface. Kind of interesting. So that is the theme going on here. So we get a little taste of this Sagittarius energy, right? Sagittarius is very, very much forward moving. It's optimistic, it's joyful, it's expansive, it wants to explore, it's the seeker, it's concerned with truth, and it really wants to learn. And it kind of looks outside of itself to learn a lot of the time. But before we can really move forward into Sagittarius energy, Mercury is going to force us to take a step back and to dive deep within ourselves through the energy of Scorpio. So, Scorpio is a fixed sign, it's a water sign, so it is very much pulling us inward at this time. And that is the rooting down that we are being invited to do through this retrograde. The rooting down is a challenging process. It's not easy because through the energy of Scorpio, we are asked to do shadow work. Or if you don't want to call it work, I mean, you can call it work if you want to. It's totally up to you how you want to view this. And that's your perspective and that's your Mercury. But we could say that this is an invitation to integrate the shadow, to get to know the shadow, to introduce yourself to the shadow. And the more that we can go inward and the deeper we can dive within ourselves, the more we can face our fears, Scorpio, our phobias, our parts of ourselves that we really don't like. Again, this is the shadow. Anything that is disconnected from your conscious expression is part of your shadow. Anything that you are repressed or disconnecting yourself from within, that is part of your shadow. Whenever you encounter someone outside of yourself that triggers you, the emotions that they're triggering, the things about them that you don't like, those are parts of your shadow being reflected back to you. So, once again, this is an invitation to go inward and make friends with your shadow, or at least accept it. At least don't hate it. At least don't disconnect yourself from it. The more that you do this, the higher you will be able to extend and to climb and to expand once Mercury goes direct. And that is what this period is all about. So it is really about becoming still and listening to the small, quiet voice within. It is truly about slowing down, which again, that's true of any Mercury retrograde period, but this one in particular, we are in the autumn season, preparing to move into winter at this, at the time of the retrograde, especially by the time it concludes. We've had a very busy year, folks. This year of the wood snake has just been super intense and transformative, and there's been a lot of shifts and a lot of challenges, and it's been very emotional. It's been very trying. If you're like me, you might be completely exhausted. So this is a perfect invitation to slow down, to recuperate, to rest, and to go into yourself to reflect and to find out what has changed within me since the year began. What's different? I've been talking all year about these yod alignments, right? We just had one at the most recent Libra new moon. Yods signify divine realignment, and divine realignment is uncomfortable. It pushes us out of our comfort zone into a paradoxical situation that forces us to surrender to divine will. It's not easy. It's incredibly challenging. But it is a beautiful thing because it helps get us in realignment. See, Mercury retrograde, blah, blah. It helps us get into realignment with our soul, with our truth, with our authenticity, to kind of do away with the ego and the mask and the societal conditioning, the perceptions, all the things that have been layered upon our foundation of truth. It helps us get to that core center of our being. So we may have been doing a lot of this work without fully integrating it on a conscious level. So this Mercury retrograde is inviting us to go inward and to do that, to integrate it, to reflect on it, to recognize what has been changing within us. Why have those changes been initiated? How are they serving us? What choices are we going to make from here on out that are going to be different than what we've done before? How are we different than we were before? And where do we want to go in the future? This is the perfect time to plan your future without necessarily taking action on it. It's the perfect time for learning. It's the perfect time for self-study, for any kind of investigation, right? You are being invited to be your own personal detective, to figure out what makes you tick and to look into the scariest, darkest parts of yourself that you have previously been afraid to look at in order to find out what's lurking in the shadows and how can I bring it into the light? And when I do that, how is that actually going to empower me? How is that going to make things better? Because anything that is hidden in the shadows is going to work against us compulsively beyond our willpower until we integrate it. And just a friendly reminder, because this Mercury retrograde is actually happening almost simultaneous to Jupiter's retrograde through Cancer. Okay, Jupiter's going to go retrograde just a couple days later, but because it's a slower, much larger planet, we're going to feel its station well before Mercury even stations in its retrograde. So these energies are kind of going hand in hand. And once again, Jupiter in Cancer has been reminding us that the shadow is not only the place that holds the aspects of ourselves that we don't want to look at, it also holds the aspects of ourselves that we have yet to uncover. The hidden gifts, the talents, uh, the pieces of ourselves that represent personal empowerment and special ability that we haven't yet, up until now, been ready to integrate with, been ready to embody in our lives. So, this is really deep, powerful work that we're being invited to do. And it's important for us to do this work because we are going to be moving through even more shifts, even more changes moving into the future here. And we have to prepare ourselves. We are leveling up, we are maturing, we are cultivating spiritual discipline. And we are stepping more and more into our own unique path and our personal truth and authenticity in order to prepare for all the work that is ahead. But it's not just work, it's also joy. It's embodiment, it's loving, and it is creating. So it's something to be excited about, but also just know that depending on how much work you've done, and each of us is very unique, we each have our own path, and there are unique things that we have to uncover within ourselves. And sometimes this work can be very difficult. So just know that you have what it takes to do it. Whatever you are confronted with, whatever you discover within yourself, within your life, it's something that you are meant to discover and that you are ready to face if you are facing it now. So just know that. You're tough, you're strong, you've got this. I believe in you. So let's talk about some of the special components of this Mercury retrograde. So it goes retrograde on November 9th, as I said. It will then move into conjunction with Mars on November 12th. So we get a blending of Mercury retrograde with Mars energy. This is interesting because just at this most recent Libra new moon, Mercury and Mars were conjunct in the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so now they're going to be conjunct again in the sign of Sagittarius, except Mercury will be retrograde, Mars will not. So we're going to get some kind of introduction of that energy there, right? And I say introduction because it is pre-solar conjunction. Again, we're going to talk about the solar conjunction in a minute here, but Mars is going to deliver some kind of message that Mercury will be conveying to us, but we may not integrate that message. We may not become conscious of it until we reach the solar conjunction. So at this point, it may mostly be subconscious, but that's where it first is introduced. And Mars, again, is our desire, our willpower, our sexual identity. It is our vitality and health. It's how we stand up for ourselves, how we protect ourselves. So something will be introduced at that time, something that is calling for recognition. But again, it's most likely going to be simmering below the surface. Then, once again, we have Jupiter turning retrograde. During the second week of Mercury's retrograde, it's actually going to make harmonious aspects to all the outer planets, including Jupiter. It will make harmonious aspects to Pluto, to Saturn and Neptune, to Uranus. So this is good energy, you could say, just to put it simply. I'm not going to break down every single aspect. That would just be a little tedious, but let's just say that all of those outer planets are influencing Mercury through its retrograde, delivering insights, delivering spiritual revelation, delivering keys for transformation. All of these are things that are being seeded in our consciousness that once again are likely to come into the forefront of our consciousness once Mercury reaches its solar conjunction. Okay, what else do I have here? Okay, I'm like, which one of these things do I say first? I always put things in order, and then after I look at the order, I realize the order is out of order. So, yeah, anyone who tries to read my notes, it's kind of like you're going to need some kind of a key, some kind of a symbol key to work through that. Anyway, so Mercury will reach its solar conjunction between November 19th and 20th. This is significant for any planetary retrograde, but especially for our personal planets, especially for Mercury. When a planet comes into solar conjunction, it means that from our perspective from Earth, it appears to be overlapping with the sun. This is symbolic of illumination. And during a retrograde phase, it symbolizes the point of climax. It's a heightening of energy, it's an intensification, and it's also turning point within the retrograde period. Usually for Mercury, because it rules our mental faculties, our logic, our conscious mind, oftentimes when it reaches its solar conjunction, which by the way is about halfway through the halfway point during its retrograde cycle, this is the moment when the unconscious becomes conscious. And sometimes we encounter things outside of us through relationships or through our lived experience. Something is mirrored back to us that helps pull that material from the unconscious into the conscious. But either way, it represents a very intense epiphanic moment. We are likely to have epiphanies, we are likely to have realizations, illumination, and sometimes that can be really intense, just know, but it can also be really magical. It just depends on how you want to approach this energy and what you're willing to derive from it. So, November 19th and 20th, solar conjunction, the peak of the Mercury retrograde. We then have Mercury, I forgot to mention, the same day as the solar conjunction. Yeah, this is just so many crazy alignments this year, folks. It's just bananas. So the same day as the solar conjunction is the new moon in Scorpio. And within the new moon, which once again, sun and moon are overlapped, Mercury's going to be right in there with the sun and the moon. We also will have Black Moon Lilith conjunct sun, moon, Mercury. So we have a quadruple conjunction during the new moon in Scorpio. It is going to be a very intense time. I will be talking about that new moon when it gets closer. We're going to dive into all the details of it. There are other alignments, who would have thought, that are happening concurrent with the new moon. But just know, that's going to be like an extra intense solar conjunction for Mercury because it's a new moon. And again, new moons are oftentimes when the shadow starts to emerge, when we are invited to connect with our shadow. So this, again, it can be really intense. And with Black Moon Lilith in the mix, talk about putting a hat on a hat. We are going to be encountering the dark, feminine, shadow aspects of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that are calling for recognition, that want to be brought into the light. So again, it's going to be super intense, most likely, but also know that these alignments and this energy hold the keys to your empowerment. And it's up to you to use them. So here we go. The very last thing I wanted to mention is that on November 25th, shortly before Mercury goes direct, it will have a conjunction with Venus. So this is interesting because Mercury has been making aspects with Venus all year through those other retrogrades. You know, like I said, back in March, they actually went retrograde together, and they each reached their solar conjunction close to the same time. It was like within a few days of each other. So they were conjunct back then, and now they are conjunct in Scorpio. And it will also form, let's see. Nope, that's not true. Okay. So, yeah, we are going to have a pretty intense Mercury retrograde to cap off our year of transformation. But it's, again, it's an opportunity for integration. And again, this is a time for stillness. This is a time for reflection. This is a time to pause and rest, because when Mercury goes direct, we will be invited into some pretty prominent forward momentum. Okay. We are going to be called to take action on things, but we need to do some of this shadow recognition, integration. We need to reflect on the changes that we've made. It's like you kind of have to look at where you've been before you can choose where you're going next. It's sort of that energy. I also want to remind everyone, in case you've forgotten, that Mercury retrograde periods are wonderful times for manifestation. Mercury is actually the planet that is associated with the Magician card in the tarot. And it symbolizes the connection of mind and matter as it rules Gemini and Virgo. So Mercury retrograde is a great time to kind of work some manifestation magic, if you will. And when it goes direct, you have the potential to see those things come into fruition. Okay. So, once again, what do you want to create? What's in alignment? Who are you now? Keep in mind that what you value, what you believe about yourself, there's that Venus connection coming in. These are things that are going to resonate in your energy field. And your energy field is what will attract to you what you can manifest, or maybe not. It depends on what your vibe is, right? So it's an opportunity to recalibrate. So, yeah. Okay. Is there anything that I forgot? No, I don't think so. It's just a time for alchemy, for transformation, for stepping into your power. And again, for taking a breath before we keep chugging along. We don't reach the next Chinese New Year, astrological New Year, until I think late February. I have to double check that, but either way, we still have a few more months. We are still in the energy of the snake, and so it is still intense. There is still a lot of transformation happening. There's still an invitation for healing going on. And that is very on par with where we are at, because we will be entering Ophiuchus season around the time that Mercury turns direct. So it is the perfect opportunity to go within, to figure out what needs to be healed, what needs to be integrated, and then we will be empowered with new tools, with new information, new insights, illumination that can help us move forward and step into the full authenticity of who we are. I believe in you. You can do it. It's going to be awesome. So keep in mind, we are in the pre-shadow right now, so this energy is starting to filter in. It will continue to get more and more intense as we come closer to the exact date that Mercury turns retrograde. And then we will also have a post-shadow period that lasts for a couple of weeks after it turns direct again, wherein we will still feel those retrograde effects, but they will start to dissipate slowly over those 2 weeks. All right, folks, I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting my work. Once again, I will post links and things down in the description. Once again, please like, please subscribe. Thank you so much. I love you all. I hope you are wonderful, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.